Hello and welcome to With Bowl and Spoon, a podcast about people's personal food evolution. I am here today with my friend Josh. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, hi everybody. I'm Josh Knauer, and I am, I guess, a bunch of things. I am a impact entrepreneur, which means I work and have worked for the past 30 years at the intersection of environmental and social betterment, and where technology and business can help achieve those goals. And so I've started and sold different companies in the space, and I do a lot of public speaking at places. I'm also a professor adjunct at Carnegie Mellon, and more importantly, I'm a nature photographer as well. So,
yeah, and you have the nature to explore that hobby very well.
I very much enjoy my backyard is Frick Park, and that is a great thing. It's been really helping me keep my sanity over the past bunch of years.
Well, I want to talk about all the stuff you're doing to save the world, which is phenomenal, and just another reason to love you. But you and I met because you're a crazy chicken guy.
Yeah.
And you joined the Crazy Chicken group of Pittsburgh, and you were on the first Chicks in the Hood urban coop tour.
That's right. So yeah, I don't even know how many years ago now, probably 10, 15 years ago.
2008?
Probably 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that could be. So we got chickens because I have a pretty extensive garden in my yard. I do a lot of soil management with that garden. And it was a combination of wanting to have the nitrogen that chicken poop can help provide and injected into, sort of my compost systems. And at the same time, my kids were young, and it seemed like a really good way to sort of, we can't literally live on an actual farm, which has always been my fantasy, that I could raise kids on a farm. But, this is sort of close. It's a very small urban plot of land in the city of Pittsburgh. And we had chickens before it was legal to have chickens in the city. And basically, the chickens have been a great part of building up our ecosystem and building out some of the food that we eat.
And it was closing the loop for you.
Oh, absolutely.
On the compost and...
Totally, because a lot of our, I'd say almost half of our food waste from the house can be diverted to the chickens. They then eat it and poop it out and turn it into, it's basically an accelerated composting program. And basically what I do with my chicken coop is about, I forget the exact dimensions, I think it's like 30 by 30 feet fenced in area. And basically the chickens have, obviously free roam within that space. So they poop a lot. I believe it's every 20 minutes or something like that. They're pooping. And
they have no control.
No control. It just happens. And so what I realized is that if I and I learned this from other people in our group and learning it online, if you let the chickens do that and mix in some chips, wood chips or other types of things onto the floor basically of that area, over time, the chickens themselves will compact down the soil enough so that it actually starts the composting process. And so what I do is I scrape the top usually by once a year. If I do it once a year, it's usually about 6 to 12 inches of this type of topsoil. It is a highly nitrogen-rich soil, so it can't go directly into a garden. It's a bad idea. It burns things if you do that. So what I do is I add that into my compost piles that I have out here and basically let that sit for about 6 months. And then after that, I have literally the most healthy, amazing, nutrient and biologically rich soil around.
It's literally good shit.
It is really good shit.
So where did you get your first chickens?
So our first chickens actually were many of our chickens actually are rescues. So they are people were wanting to give away chickens, didn't want them, and we took them in. And we've done that over the years. I think I've only ever bought, maybe a total of 6 chickens. We have 6 right now. And, we've had a rotating flock, for, I don't know, since the 90s, late 90s probably.
Really?
I think so. I think it was late. No, it might have been actually early 2000s. So yeah, early 2000s probably.
I was going to say you're like 10 years ahead of the rest of us.
We've been doing it for a long time.
Crazy chicken people. You are the original.
OG crazy chicken guy, and definitely was trying to do it on the down low because it was illegal in the city, and even along the way, there's been a bunch of permitting process and different things I've not agreed with in terms of how they've done it. And I just feel like it's a sovereign right for us to be able to grow our own food. And as long as they're not causing a disturbance. And in fact, the one, oh, there's a woodpecker. I don't know if your folks can hear it. That's a pileated woodpecker that lives in a tree right behind our house. But basically, over the years, my neighbors love my chickens because they get eggs from them. And, if you share the love of farming and food with those around you, most people don't object to whatever's going on. So we found that to be a good strategy.
I think the bonus for me, having worked at the city and at least solidified the chicken part of the zoning code, is that people don't complain about it anymore.
Correct.
Because it's there and it's legal for almost anybody. So they don't know if you have a permit or not. So most of the time, neighbors aren't going to complain about it.
Exactly.
It's when it was novel that it was
Oh, totally. When it was novel and when people didn't realize, maybe we shouldn't have roosters, because they actually make a lot of noise.
That's a thing, yeah.
That's a thing. And it's a good idea, right? This is where being a good neighbor, being in community with everybody around you, is part of that is being thoughtful, right? And as long as what you're doing isn't impacting or infringing on other people's space or rights, it seems like it's a good idea.
Yeah. So how did you find out about the chicken coop tour?
Because
you reached out to us, and I think it was.
I did.
Was it
I think
the first year or the second
No,
year?
I was
maybe?
on the first one.
You were on the
yeah,
first
I was
one?
definitely
That's
on the
what
first
I thought.
one.
So how did you even get wind of this?
I found out about the chicken tour because Jody Noble-Choder, who sort of ran the whole thing, she had a couple chickens up at the Frick Environmental Center during one of their, I think it was an Earth Day event or some event that was taking place. And I saw them. And then it turns out one of my employees at my last company, Riza, also had chickens at home. And so I asked her about it, and she was like, oh, this is easy. And here's this whole group, and here's this whole list. And she just connected me in to everybody, and the rest was history.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that first year, I was just on the planning committee for the Urban Ag Tour. And, it wasn't anywhere as sexy as the chicken coop tour. But I was, trying to impart some of the knowledge that we gained while doing those many chicken coop tours. And it just happened so easily for us.
It did.
We had 500 people come through on that first tour.
I remember on the first, we had no idea. No one had any idea how many people were going to show up, right? And, we live on a dead end, and it was crazy because our house was, for whatever reason, was one of the first places that people went. So I remember at 8 a.m, which is an hour before it was supposed to start. It's like if you have a garage sale in Pittsburgh, people always show up early. So this was the same thing. We had people lined up, and we realized, oh my goodness, we hadn't even thought about crowd control or
Yep.
the fact that, our neighbor, our street was jammed. And our neighbors were kind of pissed off about that. And then when they knew what it was, they all came out and started helping. And
oh, that's great.
It turned into this communal effort of okay, what do we do with all these people? And how do we rotate them through? And I mean, I forget how many hours. I mean, it was early in the morning until...
Well, we went 9 to 3.
Yeah.
We thought that was,
And we went later than 3, I remember. And
people wouldn't stop
No, they wouldn't start
up.
showing up, exactly. And you felt bad.
And we had a potluck after that. All of the coops met at Jody's to sort of debrief and decompress and share
I couldn't
a meal.
be late for that potluck because I hadn't eaten all day and I was really hungry. And so, that was the end of it. But it went on we did it for years after that. And
we did. Until the avian flu. Made us pause.
And then I think it all, I don't know if we did one since.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah. But now it's so, it's such a normalized thing.
We were way ahead of our time, man.
Well, that's the joy of urban
pioneering. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel that.
Totally.
100%. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey. And basically, I grew up in a farm-based area of New Jersey, which most people don't think about. It is the Garden State for a reason. But I grew up in a county called Somerset County. And basically that now, it wasn't then, but now is literally one of the wealthiest counties in the country. Has more condos than almost anywhere else in the country per, acre or whatever the number is. And all of the farms that I grew up with, all of the woodlands that I grew up wandering around in and exploring, have all been turned into housing developments and condos and shopping malls and just all of the sprawl. So I started witnessing that as a kid, and that had a huge impact on me. And fighting against and the anger that I felt about the losing of these huge areas that were my playgrounds. And for many people, obviously for the farmers, was their livelihoods, dairy farms and other type of farms that were there, they all got pushed out. And so that really at an early age sort of just instilled in me this sense of sort of like, not injustice as we think of injustice now, in terms of large communities of people, but injustice in terms of the animals and the trees and the things that literally helped me get through my childhood. And that then opened up a whole world of activism and sort of being engaged in environmental activism for most of my life.
Did you live on a farm when you were a kid?
No, okay. We lived right at the edge of a very large forest. And yes, now that's
very
exactly where I am now.
Yeah.
Totally. And it actually was larger than Frick Park in terms of size. It was not a park, was not protected in any way. So one of the blessings of being able to live in Pittsburgh, quite frankly, generally, and certainly where we are, but I think there's a lot of other places where that happens, is the ability to be near green spaces. And all throughout the city, no matter really, it doesn't matter where you are in the city. There's a lot of access to green spaces. We have I don't know if the statistic still holds, but we used to have the highest number of trees per capita of any city in the United States. And so I think choosing this space and raising my kids here was no coincidence.
So how'd you end up in Pittsburgh?
I came to Pittsburgh to go to Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
Yeah. So I came as an undergrad and barely graduated, I always like to say, and then stayed, married my wife who's from Pittsburgh, raised my kids here, started and sold 2 businesses here. And I've been rooted in the community since 1991.
Sold 2 businesses. It's like you're selling, candy bars.
Yeah.
I sold a couple of them.
Yeah, it's the least important of the things.
Yeah. Well, in that list.
In that list, of course, yeah.
So you moved here to Pittsburgh, and I know you had some companies, but you also did some environmental work, sort of voluntary or just,
absolutely.
And now you do volunteer work as well for different kind of
so
environment.
I started with working in here. I started doing student organizing, and we created something called the Student Environmental Action Coalition, and basically sort of reinvigorated the student environmental community across colleges and high schools in the region, throughout most of Western Pennsylvania, and hooked up with national organizations, that did that sort of thing. So it was a really vibrant time in the early 90s, throughout the 90s, basically, for environmental activism. It was a tough time. Now, we have entire university campuses devoted to sustainability and environmental ethics and all sorts of studies, both science and political and policy related. But when I graduated, my degree from Carnegie Mellon was self-defined in environmental ethics and policy. And I had many professors fighting against that as a major, because if the word environmental appears in front of something, it must be a science-based, it has to be about, physics or chemistry or biology. And I did study a lot of that stuff, but it is amazing to see in, the past 25, 30 years, the transformation of, now, sure, there are advocacy organizations that are here and they're doing good work, but it is not abnormal. And, sustainability is built into almost every company's, plans and thoughts. Whether they execute on it is a whole nother question. We have entire departments in government at, all levels that work on and address a bunch of these issues. And at the universities especially, it's, commonplace. So it's really neat to see that transformation. It's taken a bit and it's taken a long time, but those early days were difficult. a lot of people locally, I was literally called an environmental terrorist because I was asking questions of the legalities of logging in the Allegheny National Forest and questioning, is it a good idea to place WTI, which of course still exists, unfortunately, but we failed on that one. But is it a good idea to place the world's largest toxic waste incinerator, within 30 miles of, millions and millions and millions of people? And it turns out the answer is no, it's not a good idea. It's a really bad idea, in fact. And
but they didn't want to talk about it.
They didn't want to talk about it. And now a WTI would never be able to be opened again in this area.
You hope.
We hope, right? And we have to remain
they just
vigilant.
opened the cracker plant, so...
Well, the cracker plant that's this generation's version of the same thing, right? A terrible idea, both economically and health-wise. And basically, I mean, in the name of this false economics of jobs, which honestly, this is where my business side comes in. You look from a business perspective, I look at these operations and I look at these plans and plants that people want to open, and like fracking, it makes no freaking sense. It literally makes no sense economically. And then you look at it from a social impact perspective or a environmental perspective, and my goodness, why on earth would we choose to sully our property values and the values in our community, the value of our community, by allowing these outside corporations to come in and play themselves as local, and because they're creating a few construction jobs during the building of something that is basically a fully automated plant once it's built. I mean, this is the exact state of the world that we're in, right? This short-sighted, if I as a politician, if I'm the county executive, who our current county executive is a complete sellout to this type of industry, and just has no brains to even evaluate the business side of why this is such a bad idea for taxpayers, let alone governments that have to then deal with all the after effects of these types of things. And yeah, these fights are still going on, but there is so much more awareness now as to why these things are a bad idea. And that to me is what gives me hope. Entire generations, younger than me, grow up and can't even believe that boomers would even think about building, a plant like this, or, so it is just a matter of time till, generationally that this is going to get fixed. But there's a bit of urgency, right, around climate change, especially. And so this is where the work is still yet to be done, and we all need to be pitching in to make it happen.
I feel like I was channeling my question, but just waiting for a moment to pose it, but you answered it. And that was like, isn't there more knowledge now? Like, isn't it obvious that, like, the cracker plant, like, we don't need the plastic.
No.
It is polluting.
Yeah.
And there aren't a lot of jobs. Isn't that obvious? Or is it just because I know it that I feel like everybody knows it? It's so obvious.
So, look, we all do know it, but the world of disinformation that exists currently is so overwhelming. There are well-meaning people, I'm sure, in both government and in local economic development agencies, and who believe the rhetoric, and don't question a lot of the quote-unquote facts that are being presented, and then use that as a cudgel basically to incite the local communities to say, and people who really don't understand, unfortunately, the mechanics of these types of things, to say, wow, well, this is industry. Industry is good because it provides jobs. And this is what's been happening for the past 150 years of the Industrial Revolution. Don't you want to continue that? And literally, that is the mindset. And that is the generational change that we're in the middle of right now, where more and more the answer is no. It's not a coincidence to me that in upstate New York, or in all of New York State, they've banned fracking. Right? It is, and have for quite some time. And that is because...
And they're protecting their watersheds.
And they're protecting their watersheds, right? And they're understanding why it's such a bad idea. And unfortunately, in Western Pennsylvania, yet again, after many cycles of industrial... I mean, if you look at the history of the region, throughout the Industrial Revolution, every 20 or 30 years, we learn this lesson that, like, oops, that savior industry that we thought was the industry that was going to save us all may not have been the right one to bet on. And why did we literally pull down our pants and bend over and, and not in a pleasant way, just allow ourselves to be taken like that? And it's really, it is a little shocking to me how that cycle keeps repeating. The cracker and, natural gas world is the current, we're in the current throes of that. And it's amazing that, once again, people who don't actually follow the economics of these things don't understand that, like, the entire, like, natural gas industry has collapsed. Like, it's in a terrible situation. Most of the wells that are, that we're overpaid for here, and the companies that were behind them, are bankrupt, right? And landowners, some in the early days, made a whole bunch of money, but right now, really, you just end up with a mess, and you end up with an industry that can't even clean up the mess that they're creating. Does that sound familiar to us, right? How many times do we need to go through that before we learn?
It's hard to think about how urgent the situation is, but then how, everything moves so slow and change comes so slow. And having worked for government for 9 years, and it did accomplish a few things, but it took so long. And if there is this urgency around, the climate, I mean, I believe there is. I'm not questioning that. But if there is this urgency, why aren't there more, I guess, leaders, the leadership, like, cutting out the time frame that it takes to, like, get the solar going and get the, like, all of those new technologies?
It's clear to me.
People are worried about their comfort.
Sure. So I think we're looking in the wrong places for leaders, is really what it comes down to. And so basically, really, we don't have leaders in government. John Fetterman, just recently, I saw an interview that he did on Stephen Colbert, right? And one of the best lines, is look, we don't send our best and brightest into government. And don't mean to be offensive to people who work in government or the people who are elected into those positions. But the fact of the matter is the government is not leading right now. The nonprofit NGO world is not leading right now. They are broken systems that are have motivations associated with them that are just gotten totally out of alignment with the original missions and goals of which they started. So who are the leaders, and where are the leaders, right, in the world right now? And I would actually argue, and this may come as a surprise, like, as a way to say it, but I think the for-profit sector is right now where we're seeing the most innovation take place along climate, along, basically people and institutions that are willing to take a flyer, which is what government and nonprofits used to do, right? Do the experimental crazy stuff that, companies couldn't afford to do profitably and figure it out. Now we've seen, and this has been a movement that I've witnessed and I've been a part of since its infancy in the 90s, late 80s and 90s, which is basically thinking about how do we hijack capitalism, and how do we actually hack the system so that we are using the market forces for good. And is there a way to do that? And the answer is absolutely there is. And it's not just me, crazy one person in the wind saying it. We now have an entire classification of type of corporation called a B Corp, which exists to do exactly that. That is, and then, many states allow for public benefit corporations to be created, where you have multiple bottom lines built into your bylaws of your company. That is a governance way to allow companies to risk it, right? To say, we're going to make decisions not just based on the financial best interests of our shareholders, but that and the best interests of the environment and the best interests of people and communities, right? And if you build some version of that into, it's literally takes $120 to file for one of these companies, to become one. And what we're seeing is in the spaces of diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and in terms of biodiversity protection and climate change and reversing poverty and creating safe spaces and environments for people who are, have been downtrodden by and ignored by society for a really long time. The for-profit world right now is actually doing the best job of leading and coming up with those best case studies and examples. And this may sound all discordant to people who are listening, right? Because we see huge corporations out in the world that are doing terrible things, right? We see lots of corporations that are making really short-sighted decisions. ExxonMobil deciding that, screw it, we don't even need to we're not even going to make pretend we have a climate plan, and we are just going to, thumb our nose at this whole thing called climate change, and we're not even going to try, right? And then you have other companies, and no great huge corporate players, but like BP, right? Or General Mills, the food company, or any number of very, very large corporations that are not known for their environmental or social responsibility, who actually are, and hear me out, don't react right away and think I'm a corporate shill here, but who, because of smaller companies that are operating in their spaces, that have actually been able to show you can be profitable by being more socially and environmentally responsible and looking at your bottom line, that you can do it and succeed, that you actually get to maybe get ahead of regulations and not have, the government regulators breathing down your neck every minute because you're a bad corporate actor. There are benefits to actually doing the right thing. And so we're seeing it is a slow bending of a twig, but it is happening. Very, very large corporations on their own, because of pressure from their customers and from society, not from government and not from nonprofit organizations for sure anymore, but from the market forces that they serve, are telling them they need to do more, right? And yeah, ExxonMobil is still out there being a total pain in the ass, to everybody, but there are many, many other companies out there that are actually trying to do the right thing and sort of looking for what is a way to get out of this horrible cycle that we're in. And so that's at the extreme large corporation side. I work at the startup and early stage company side of things, and wow, is that an exciting space to be in. I mean, when you look at climate tech, when you look at a lot of the different schemes that companies are working on, trying to figure out ways to path to commercialization for kick-ass technologies that are the solutions to our climate crisis, when applied well in balance with and in partnership with local communities, wow, is it exciting, right? I mean, it is truly, it's mind-boggling to see all of the positive things that are starting to happen and how big corporations are, in fact, working towards and trying to learn from those smaller companies. Yeah, for their own profit and their own gain and all the rest, but okay, cool. If we can make it profitable and beneficial for everybody to run a business that is actually working for climate change or working for increasing biodiversity or any of the other issues that we care about, let's do it. Because if you can get to scale, you can build a company in a very short period of time. And guess what? You don't need any government approvals to do it. You don't need the nonprofit think tanks and white paper writers and, all the fundraisers and all the rest that just honestly are navel gazing while the planet burns. We don't need them to lead. They will follow. And they'll come along with us. But businesses are at the forefront of all this right now.
So when you're talking about businesses are at the forefront, I'm excited about that. Are you talking about companies that are looking at alternate ways of heating our homes and cars and reducing the carbon footprint?
Yes.
Are you talking about carbon sequestration? Or are you talking about all of the
things? It's so much
things?
broader than that. I mean, basically, obviously...
I don't have all the words.
Yeah, no. So to address climate change, right, we need to do two really simple things. And fundamentally, they're simple, right? We need everybody. We need corporations and all human involved activity needs to reduce the amount of emissions that we're causing to have happen, right? The best way to do that, hands down, it's obvious, the science is all there, but the best way to do that is to stop with the fossil fuels already, right? We just got to stop. And we're addicted to them. I'm addicted to them. We're all addicted, right? And we're all polluters in what we do. And basically, we need to stop extracting carbon in the form of coal and oil and gas and all those things from the ground and burning it to create energy, right? Really bad idea. And we need to quintuple. We need to put it should be the Civilian Conservation Corps sort of call to action for our society as a whole to just start working on all of the implementations of alternative energy that we need to get there. right? And to provide every incentive and every research grant and every opportunity, tax break, and every opportunity that we possibly can to get industry and our households, and innovation happening in those areas. A lot of that is happening. And in the for-profit sector, there are so many cool things going on around reduction of emissions and extensive amounts of work in so many different ways, looking not just at what we think of as emissions, like from smokestacks, from a coal-fired power plant. I mean, obviously, there's no future in that. And in fact, little secret, the coal industry knows that, right? They're planning for what happens for 5 to 10 years from now when we're just not going to be able to burn coal anymore. So that is, we are there. The investment community knows that. No smart investor in the world, anyone, in any place, is investing in new coal-fired power plants. Like, that is a terrible investment to be making right now, right? Investing in oil and oil refining and all, that's a terrible investment to be making right now. And so, market forces are coming around to things, and actually it's why probably, if I was to give some credit in the nonprofit space, some of the best organizing that has taken place around climate has come from economic activity and nonprofits like college student organizations going after their endowments at the universities that they attend to get fossil fuels out, right? Mm-hmm. Most of that work was financed by nonprofit foundations, some really excellent ones that were doing really good work. Following that up with, that's why it was divest, right, from fossil fuels, but then invest in, take that money and plow it into the green economy. And the green economy is very real. It's happening. It's not it is just used as a statement from a lot of politicians. But in the business world, it's very real. There's an entire sector with probably trillions of dollars of activity happening in it that is around this green economy. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of, it's so far beyond, what are we sequestering carbon? And of course, this. I love talking about carbon and will, but this goes way beyond that, right? This is all about many different ways in which we can live our lives in a more low impact way, that companies can implement systems and practices and new technologies and use AI for optimization of polluting systems, for example. I mean, there's just so many different examples that are out there across all sectors. And we are in the United States, certainly in terms of government support, but also by numbers, we're way behind the rest of the world. So China right now is, they're producing infinitely more. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but a lot more electric vehicles, and also the sustainable energy that goes, to power them. Yep, they are doing bad things with coal, and I get that, and it's not like that China gets a free pass, but when you look at the directional nature of their economy and where it's going, and you look at the EU, and you look at South America, and you look at Africa, green energy, green technology is the future, and everyone knows it.
You have been an activist for a long time. I understand you were an activist in elementary school.
I was. Yep.
So you had this self-confidence at a really young age. Was that influenced from your family? Were they activists as well?
It's really funny. My family were not activists. My sister was. Was. But
older or younger sister?
Older sister. And
she taught you well.
My big sister. But we were actually raised in a generation of that being an activist is dangerous. That speaking out gets you noticed and gets you bad attention. And so that's not blaming my parents for that message. That literally is generational, I think, for a lot of folks.
It's protecting you.
It's protecting. Yeah, It was a protective thing. And in my family and the history of my family, it comes out of being persecuted in Eastern Europe and seeing, half my family murdered during the Holocaust. And, that's a big downer, obviously, but that has intergenerational context and impacts. And luckily, it was actually teachers that encouraged me as a young kid who was these days, I'm sure I would have been diagnosed as ADHD, and I would have, I couldn't sit still, and I was bored, and I acted out, and all that stuff. And luckily, they helped channel it into something productive, which was activism at the time. And then it got really intense and out of hand. When I remember our high school, we organized a sit-in to block school buses from being able to pick up kids on the morning that aerial spraying of Bacillus thuringiensis was happening, but aerial from a plane, across entire swaths of our township. And the same teachers who basically tried to encourage me to become an activist, and I then organized and worked with others to organize large numbers of other students to do it, were a bit perplexed when they had to literally negotiate with the police not to arrest us, So it was, that was an interesting leap.
How old were you the first time you got arrested?
Actually, I've been arrested, never convicted, twice. And the first time I was arrested, actually, I was probably 19.
Okay. I'm thinking you're like
No,
10.
I could have been. No, I in high school, I definitely, I was really close to getting arrested, if not for my teachers intervening, actually, on my behalf. And the school district was kind of upset with that. It was a really cool bit of a dynamic going on, at the moment. But that encouragement from those teachers really was, and then I will say the thing that my parents did teach me, and certainly my culture, and I think of it as culture, some would say religion perhaps, but it's more of a cultural side of things, is this idea of it's our duty in life to make the world better. And so in Judaism, it's called tikkun olam, and it's a deep value that it's one of the really one of the only values probably of it, that of all that education, and religious stuff that stuck. But I deeply believe it. And now that I have kids, I understand so deeply in my soul, why that is the thing. And, have tried to act accordingly.
It blows my mind that there are so many religions that have a similar sort of protect, nature and respect nature and
Yep.
And all of these corporations. I mean, there's so many people in the world, so many religions, and so much of this, and then still getting through. You'd think that the wrecking the planet would be the minority.
Oh yeah,
it's not.
It turns out
mind-boggling.
It is technically, it's the minority of our human population that is in control, that is actually doing these actions, and then the majority sits silently by and lets it happen. And that is fundamentally one of the human conditions that you see throughout history. We're seeing it right now elsewhere in the world, where you have these crazy actors, and actors being politicians, presidents of countries, legislative bodies, and other forms of leaders out, quote unquote, in the world that are out there killing in the name of, right? I mean, it is literally what they're doing. And that is, it's extreme when we see wars happening and, actual conflict. But it's actually more pervasively violent when we see corporations doing it. And, it is a violence that's being perpetrated on the planet and in humanity with this concept that it's for the economy. It's because, we need to, or, people need jobs, or whatever the justifications are. Those justifications are not moral, and they're not based on a morality, a conduct of morality that is what guides most humans on the planet. So then what do? Right? There's a disconnect, because the people who are making those decisions are human, right? We have to remember that. And they do actually think that they want to do the right things, but they're operating in a code of conduct that is so outside of that. And I just find it ironic, that we say, for example, that corporations are people, right? That's actually now law in the United States.
Bonkers.
And yet they don't have to act in the same, with any of the same laws or any of the same conduct that we as individuals do. Could you imagine if I just decided to start burning a whole bunch of coal in my backyard right now, and had a huge smoke and built a little smokestack for it to go up? I'm not allowed to do that, right? I'm not allowed to take my sewage from my house and just dump it out into the stream next to my house. if individuals aren't allowed to do that, why the hell are corporations allowed to do that?
Yeah.
And so, anyway, the point is, we need to get aligned in our values and in the way that we're approaching these things.
So there's a spider trying to get in my boot.
Yeah, we're outside.
I know. I'm just.
All good.
It's fun. It's a bonkers thing.
It is bonkers.
The world is bonkers, Josh. And how are you
so look,
fixing it? Well,
the word. Okay.
I do have another question
Please.
for you. Sorry.
It's all good.
Because we could talk about climate change in the world.
Of
Like,
course.
it is a food podcast. I kind of want to bring it back
Yeah.
to food, but I have one question for you, and that's, I'm guessing the answer is that, all of your years of activism led up to this, but when you made your own, essentially, program in college, your own degree in college, and people are like, you're graduating with this degree, and people are like, you're bonkers, you're a terrorist, you're this, you're that, like, what allowed you to move forward with that? I mean, I got an assigned degree, and I still wasn't sure what I was going to do with it.
So I go back to history again. I'm a big fan of history, and believe that things that happened hundreds of years ago are, lead to what's happening now, not as fate necessarily, but just as it's just a natural order of things. Mm-hmm. And so I look back, I mentioned my family and trauma, but I also, when I've done the research now, and I go back, 7, 8 generations of my family, every single generation of my family were entrepreneurs, right? They all started businesses. They all had businesses. They were working in crazy situations against all odds. Most of them were like moderately successful. I don't come from a family that had, massive intergenerational wealth transfer of any sort. But when I think about what is it in me that causes me to like be able to look at problems and see opportunity, an opportunity along the lines of not like, oh, how do I get ahead, but how do we all get ahead? How do we create a triple bottom line answer to this problem? That's just literally the way I think, right? I can't not think that way. And so, creating my own major, and, working, and to be clear, it's not me creating my own major, but finding and being attracted to the people that have the skill sets to help me think through how to do this and recognize, that entrepreneur in me, that learning how to and understanding how to put that all together into something that works.
So you had some really great mentors along
I had
the way.
so many mentors along the way. It is, and so many from my educational background, in my own family. My dad, on the entrepreneurial side of things, was so influential, and my mom too, actually, in the work that they both did together. Like, and then out in society, I remember meeting earliest days of starting my first company, Green Marketplace, which was like back in the 1996, was an e-commerce company that took the natural products industry online. I got to meet Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop, and just blowing my mind, as a human being. Unfortunately, she died years ago, but her writings and recordings of her speeches and things like that are still out there. And I encourage everybody to read about her and her philosophies and how she approached things. But it was people like that that really came forward and recognized that there was something going on in my head, and the way that I thought that, yes, was actually useful to what they wanted. I helped The Body Shop go online, right? And, start selling their products online. Sure. That was a thing. And that was a huge help in getting my business started, and getting the backing that I needed to make that happen. But really, it was a sense of giving back that I saw from these mentors. It wasn't just about that. It was about like truly wanting to make sure the next generation was ready, and was thinking in ways that like, you don't have to toe the line. You don't need a degree that says you are good in something to be good in it. And that is a paralysis that we have in our society, that many people think that you need that in order to succeed. Now, to be clear, if you're going to build me a bridge or you're going to operate on me, like, please get the degree, like be the best, and like have it all down on paper and get all the, do all that stuff, because that's really important. But when we're talking about solving climate crises and all the rest, yes, we need the engineers and the scientists and people who have those degrees, but we also need the people who are more creative and more interdisciplinary in the way that they think about solving problems. And that's the camp I come out of, basically.
That's really exciting. I say this is a food podcast. It's
Sure.
about people's personal evolution in a lot of different ways. So sustainability is a thing. I don't know if you've listened to the Origin episode that I did.
Yeah.
That's talking about how I came up with the name With Bowl and Spoon.
Yep.
And that was because I was in Czechoslovakia and they didn't have disposable bowls and spoons.
Right.
So we brought our own.
Yep.
So it's not just about food. But I guess I thought with the chickens, you have a food interest, but also you're looking at systems. So
Yes.
you're a systems thinker, and that's where you're coming from with this. But recently in your, I don't know if it's just your latest enterprise or if you've been working with cacao farmers in other times, but that is your most recent thing that I've heard about. And so it's bringing the food and the systems and even, adding in all the layers.
I am a co-founder of a company called Reseed at reseed.farm, if you want our website. But basically, we are focused as a for-profit company on, we have a triple bottom line. We're a public benefit corporation. Our goal is to improve the livelihoods of farmers globally, specifically focusing on smallholder farmers. So the poorest of farmers, there are 600 million smallholder farms in the world, over 2 billion people engaged in the farming activity on that land. And all of them, quite literally all of them, live at or below the poverty level in the country in which they're farming. And we always, I could go off and start talking about smallholder farming for a long time, but to get back to your question, what we realized is that in the world of climate change and in the solutions to climate change that people were looking at, farmers were not being engaged. And in the world of carbon credits, which we can talk about quite a bit if you'd like, but basically in the world of if we believe that we need to reduce the overall amount of emissions that we're causing to go in the world, and along the way towards net zero, we pay other people to offset what we can't, and be very blunt about what that actually is. It is those two mechanisms. One causes emissions not to go out into the atmosphere in the first place, and the other, carbon credits, if done well, which we can talk about, but they're not done well most of the time. But if you could do it well, you have the ability to draw down from the atmosphere the gigatons of carbon, legacy carbon that's sitting in the atmosphere from 150 years of burning fossil fuels in the industrial revolution. Basically, if you could do those two things together in concert, you've got a very viable solution for climate change, right? And so farmers if you look at the world of carbon credits, which are a mechanism to measure the amount of carbon that you're pulling down from the atmosphere and storing permanently in the ground, farmers represent less than 1%, 0.03% of all carbon credits today on the market, which is a very, very small number, are based on helping farmers do sustainable farming practices in order to get to drawdown of carbon. And so we saw that as an opportunity. Once again, it's a problem, right? Huge problem. But you've got 600 million of these farms representing millions and millions and millions of hectares and of course even more of acres of land around the world that nobody is actually measuring anything related to, is not engaging. And they're not engaging them in a market that actually right now the carbon credit world is biased towards wealthy landholders and others, but basically people of wealth and companies of wealth. And so we basically looked at that and we said, what if there was a better way? What if you could actually get those farmers engaged in climate change behavior, get recognized for the work that they're already doing to protect the climate, and get them to do more and economically make it financially worth their while. And that's where Reseed was born. So very quickly, we basically we talk to farmers all the time about, we work with farmers to help them harvest and monetize a new type of crop. That crop is data. There are many companies and individuals around the world that are willing to pay them for that data in different forms. And just like when a farmer that we work with in Brazil harvests bananas and sends it out to market, sometimes those bananas are turned into baby food, and other bananas are turned into banana bread, and yet more show up on store shelves as bunches of bananas, right? That we all know. The raw material is bananas, and then it gets processed into a lot of different things. You can do the same thing with data, and basically carbon credits are one data product that we now have on the market. We're working with over 10,000 farmers in Brazil that are our first crop of farmers that we're working with. Next year, we're now opening up operations in 12 new countries. So we'll go from 10,000 farmers probably easily into the low hundreds of thousands of farmers that we're going to be working with by the end of next year. And the idea is to fill that gap in the market and basically get farmers' carbon work and credits for that work sold and into the market. And currently, as we're selling our carbon credits from farmers in Brazil, we're doubling their household income, annual household income. So that is has a huge impact on climate, for sure. It has an even bigger impact on the livelihood of those farmers, right? It turns, many of our farmers are actually moving from statuses of poverty to subsistence farmers.
Yeah.
Some, it's not just subsistence. What's interesting is subsistence farming is when you're feeding yourself, right? And maybe, some of your neighbors. Many of the farms that we work with are in corporate supply chains.
Really?
They
Okay.
are sending their cacao up to and get turned into a candy bar that Hershey's makes or whatever it might be, right? And the nuts that they grow, there's many different crops. I mean, we track, I think on our farms in Brazil right now, there's over 100 different crops that we track that are being grown there and harvested. Most are going to market, and many are used for subsistence. So it's a balance of both. But we all have to understand, in most of the world, smallholder farmers directly feed 70 to 80% of the population, right? And so we are losing smallholder farms. And the knowledge of those farmers that have been working the land forever, basically we are losing those farms globally at a rate of 10% of the world's smallholder farms are being lost every 10 years. We just looked at a study in West Virginia that shows in West Virginia they lost 10% of their smallholder farms in the last 6 years, right? And so at different places in the world, there's different accelerated models of this happening. And what's cool about this, and I say cool from an economics and hacking the market perspective, what's cool about it is I can go into a very large corporation that sources a lot of its raw materials from smallholder farmers around the world, coffee, cacao, lots of different types of grains and herbs and spices and all kinds of cool products. And say to them, look, in your SEC filing that you just did, which is what you do for your publicly traded corporation to the federal government and to investors, you listed the loss of smallholder farms in, as a major threat to your supply chain, and and have acknowledged why that's happening. Why don't we work together? And we can you can pay to have carbon credits come from the farmers in your supply chain. And you are solving a problem internally of what do we do about climate action? We have this climate action plan and we don't know how to do this well and substantively and all the rest. We can help there. And if you're doubling the household income of the farmers in your supply chain, it ensures it is an almost 100% guarantee that they are able then to stay on the land and continue producing for you. Right? And in all of that, I didn't say anything about climate or all the biodiversity that these farmers are protecting, or the thousands of tons of carbon that most of these individual farms are actually storing and protecting and keeping from becoming emissions, and then also causing to be drawn down. So we can get to that, right? And by the way, if you want to start talking about measuring the social impact of this work that you corporation just did, we will be able to give you the data that feeds right into your ESG reporting that you do to talk about how many, lots of companies like talking about the UN SDGs, the number one SDG, literally the number one is poverty reduction. We can literally show how many people, how many families, individuals, and all the rest you've helped take from poverty and out of poverty through your economic activity, right? That's a model that is win-win-win all around. The farmers love it. The companies love it because we're making something that's really hard for them, really simple. And quite frankly, now governments are starting to love it, right? We're starting to see governments actually look at the model and protocol that we've established. We have UN agencies coming to us. We have federal governments around the world coming to us that basically want to implement our protocol for how we measure carbon and how we measure that social impact, which is totally unique and different. There's nobody else doing it yet. But basically, how to implement that more in their countries. And that's, once again, for-profit innovation leading on social and environmental innovation, and governments and nonprofits following behind. I'm happy with that, right? That works for me. It will be, it is a very profitable activity to do, but for every dollar that the company makes in profit, our farmers make 10. And no matter what the transaction, that is always happening. And so basically, I know that all of the values of what we do, of a for-profit company, that's the triple bottom line, that is the profit motive, right? It's one of the three, but that means we're definitely helping farmers. And by helping farmers in the way that we are, we're also guaranteeing that the climate is benefiting as well. It's not hard, it sounds complicated, but you can think about any problem this way, and you can build businesses around it, and you don't have to worry about what your local county, executive bozo is doing. And I'm hoping we get a new one soon, by the way, who I believe, I'm very excited. We don't need to make this political, but I'm really excited for Sarah Innamorato to be elected. And hopefully, I don't know, whenever somebody listens to this, maybe she already will be. But this is the type of young, innovative, forward-thinking leadership that we need. And it's part of what gives me hope, right? Because then finally, local businesses that are doing good will have a partner in government. And wouldn't that be great?
Absolutely. And I think what I really, really dig is the unintended consequences of your businesses and these activities. Like you've got the data as a product that you're offering the farmers to have as a crop, and it was funny that you called them a crop of farmers.
No, I know. Crop. It's terrible. Everything is an ecosystem, is a metaphor that is related to something I'm doing. That's just a word
perfect.
thing.
It's perfect.
Yeah. And it also is because, unfortunately right now, and for the time being, it's very difficult for us to just work with a single farmer, like in an area. So we are always working with cooperatives or tribes or larger groupings of farmers in specific regions so that there's an optimization that can take place in our work when we do that. Large groupings of farmers. I'm not sure what the right term is, but that
was perfect.
Maybe it is a crop.
I thought so. Like you essentially are a farmer.
Yes.
Of data,
yes.
And one of your crops is the farmers. The other is their land.
Yeah, I mean, just so that it doesn't come across in any form of extractive way. Our farmers are actually our business partners. And that is the way we look at them, right? Mm-hmm. Each one they have to be benefiting from our work in order for our work to even happen in the first place, right? And that's a really cool, that's what you can do when you get creative with starting businesses, right? And hacking this concept. Like our business would not work if we were exploiting farmers, right? Because then it literally, we violate, our investors could sue us for not following, one of the three principles of which, of the company that they invested in, which makes me happy, that my investors actually would keep me honest on things like that, right? If I were ever to fall astray, or the team was. But the fact of the matter is that if we stop doing that, the very core notion of the value of that data and the value of the economic livelihood increase that we're measuring as part of the value that we can deliver to companies goes away. And if that goes away, we have no product, right? It is, you build into the DNA of a company these values so that you can't stray from them. It is nonsensical to stray from them in my world because I literally kill my own product.
Yeah.
And our business partners get that and they love it and they've never seen anything like it.
So with this, method of providing the farmers with an additional crop, which is data.
Yeah.
Data.
Data. Yeah, I don't know. Data, right? Tomato.
Let's call it data.
Yeah.
Whatever. So you're providing your farmers with an additional crop, and that is helping to keep them from temptations of being bought out by corporations, or
so
somehow
it would be nice
losing the farm, or what's the alternative?
So here's the reality of most of those 600 million farms around the world. In the United States, the USDA, I think, classifies 220,000, and that number keeps plummeting every year, of smallholder farms in the United States. Many of those what were labeled as smallholder farms don't fit our criteria because they're vineyards owned by wealthy millionaires and corporations actually that own land as an investment and all kinds of stuff. So we have to get out of our sort of Western mindset of thinking about transfer of what happens to these farmers. 65% of the farmers we work with in Brazil have had their lives threatened in the last year as pressure, intimidation to get off of their land. So their land is not
just abandon it, not sell it.
Their land. So we work in quilombola communities, specifically in Brazil. It's very interesting, and they're an amazing cultural group of formerly enslaved people in Brazil that have had communities that have been active for the past 400 years. And basically, the farmers that we work with there, the story is very, very similar to colonization of the American West. We've all seen the movies and the stories, right? If we want to look at it that way, if you don't actually follow real history, you see the movies and the stories of, the robber baron banks and railroads that came in and cleared people off their land. They hired thugs to go out and push people and intimidate people and scare people off of their land. That's not fiction. That happened then, and it is absolutely happening now around the world. When we think about palm oil, when we think about soy and soy crops that we eat, basically almost all of those crops are grown in an industrial agriculture sort of mode. Large corporations that are literally just stealing land from indigenous and local communities and traditional communities of all sorts throughout all of Central and South America, throughout all of Africa, and throughout much of Asia, right? The equatorial regions of the world are under attack by these companies and their thugs. And I say this with direct personal experience seeing this happen. We just, about a month ago now, lost one of the farmers who was an organizer of farmers in one of the quilombola communities that we work in. She was murdered in her home. These thugs came in and shot her in front of her entire family, right? This is the reality. It's harsh. It's horrible. It literally causes me to choke up and cry. But this is the reality of what it means to be a smallholder farmer right now in the world. And we all need to get wise to that. We need to understand it and do something about it, right? And ways that we can do things about it, certainly supporting the type of work that companies like Reseed are doing, and there are many that are trying to do fair trade certifications and GMO-free, and there are many partners that we have in that industry that are doing really, really good work trying to help these farmers. People can make choices about the food they buy, right? And this gets to a whole area of sort of knowledge that I came to when it comes to food. The best thing that we can all do is be food activists, right? And it doesn't mean you have to go out in front of Kraft Foods and protest them for the, whatever stuff they make. Literally choosing to feed your family with healthy, local as possible, and direct from the farm as possible food. If you like chocolate, for example, guess what? There are no cacao trees growing in Western Pennsylvania. It is not a thing that you can eat locally.
Or anywhere in the U.S.
Or really anywhere in the U.S. So what does that mean? If you want chocolate, I'm a big fan of you should eat chocolate. I think it's fine, right? Actually, there are people who might disagree with that because you do have to ship it and blah, blah, blah.
Mexico, it's right there.
It's right there. But there is an entire industry of chocolate companies innovating that are called bean to bar chocolate companies, right? And they're the ones that are making the chocolate bars that show up, and I will give a shout out. Whole Foods has an excellent selection of them. East End Food Co-op has a decent selection of them if you're here in Pittsburgh. But basically, you can find these types of products. But what you have to do to be a really good food activist, as far as I'm concerned, is read labels, right? And if there's more than like 4 ingredients, basic ingredients in your chocolate, it's too much. Right? If it doesn't say bean to bar on it, if it doesn't say exactly where it came from, just because it's organic and just because it might be in Whole Foods or just because you saw an ad that says it's the right type of chocolate, doesn't necessarily mean it is. Bean to bar chocolate is always better, literally always better than the processed crap that's out there. Right. And guess what? You can do the same thing with coffee. You can do the same thing with the fruit that you buy. Like, there are so many different pathways to making this happen. And I think that we just all can spend a little bit more time thinking and then a lot more time doing. And it will have a huge impact, because generally right now, I mean, think about it. You and I have lived in Pittsburgh long enough, right? When I first came to Pittsburgh, Giant Eagle did not have any organic food in it, right? There was nothing great about the food options that were there. And the fact of the matter is that, there's a long way to go. There's still a lot of bad stuff, but there are entire sections of Giant Eagle now devoted to this type of stuff. And that's our local supermarket here just in Western Pennsylvania, and maybe into some other regional areas. But the point is, change does happen. And that change only happened. It only happened because of consumer activism. And we can do that. And I think it's one of the simplest things we can do, because we live in a society where we're all spending money, we're all ordering things, we're all just do it with a little bit of thought.
Europe has always been better at supporting those values than the US has been.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
their chocolate is just so much better.
So, well, actually, I challenge that.
Really?
Yeah. So the quality.
Cadbury versus Hershey, is that what we're going up against?
Yeah, or Lindt, or some of the other brands that we think of as being like these super high-end chocolate brands. They're made from, mixed cacao, coming from areas that literally have child labor and slave labor in the supply chain, right? That's a problem. Yeah. And, some of the best and most luxury brands in Europe, actually, many of the Swiss brands and the Belgian brands and all the rest, they're a very tasty product. They're a product that is much higher quality, right, in terms of some of the ingredients that they're using, but it's still dirty, quite frankly, and it's not bean to bar. And bean to bar is the exquisite ability to be able to taste a chocolate bar, that has 75% of its cacao, it's a 75% cacao chocolate bar, which is among my anywhere between 70 and 85% is like my perfect zone for dark chocolate. You literally taste the fact that cacao is a fruit, right? Mm-hmm. It is an explosion of amazing taste that can go on in your mouth. And the experience is so different than chomping into a Nestle Crunch bar, which I admit I grew up doing, right? And I actually do have, in my darker moments, eating a Nestle Crunch bar or a Three Musketeers bar is like almost a happy place. Like it's a dark, happy place.
It's nostalgia.
It's nostalgia. Yeah. I might have had a few when Trump got elected, I'll be honest. But like the fact of the matter is that like, really, the real experience with food, as we know from growing tomatoes in our own yards or eating fresh eggs, or all the things that we know about when we have excellent food, the same can be true for food, all the food that we eat. And I think that doing that, supporting that, and making sure that we understand the real issues is the most important part of activism that we can all do.
I was leaning more towards, leading you down the path of talking about Europe and how you're but also because Europe has eliminated a lot of like food colorings and additives and that sort of stuff from general.
There is a societal support throughout Europe, and it does exist elsewhere too. But Europe is really leading the way in so much of this, where citizens have made it perfectly clear what they expect, right? And governments reflect that in most areas. There's some exceptions, but you can't launch a product that has a chemical in it where research hasn't shown that it is in fact safe as opposed to research that, may come along, that you release things like we do here. It's the opposite of precautionary principle of what we do here in the United States. So in Europe, there's all sorts of regulatory things, but there's also opportunity in that, right? In the EU, in this spring, they passed a regulation that any imported consumer product, you have to show that it came from land that was not deforested, and you have not harvested trees from that land for anything other than a natural disaster taking place, basically. And that deforestation-free certification is something that my company jumped on right away, right? We were able to do that and provide that for every single one of our farmers to be able to say, because that's a huge part of what we do with them, is to make sure you're not cutting down trees and you're not destroying the carbon and the vehicles for carbon to get into the ground, which is photosynthesis, right, that's taking place on your land. So once again, regulation leading to opportunity, that is hacking capitalism, right? That's hacking what most companies complain about. And I always see opportunity in situations like that, and I just wish more of corporate America would do the same.
Absolutely. If we could only have some sort of guiding certification for non-child labor and something that can be proven larger, because those are things that we don't even think about. And
correct.
Slavery wasn't present in England and in Europe necessarily like it was in the U.S., but they were benefiting from it a great deal.
Oh, I mean, the entire British Empire was built on slavery.
Absolutely. Now there are people finding out about it, and they're doing reparations, and they never even owned slave. It's so weird.
It is. There's so much. That is such a deep topic. I think
we can.
One of the ways to address generally the reparations that we need to make as Western society and that has been spewing out the industrial system, right, that was launched by slavery. I mean, the Industrial Revolution in the United States was powered originally by slavery. So we need to own that, right, and admit that. And then, sure, we, at some point made it illegal, and then we kept screwing people, along the way. And then there were entire classes of people in terms of poor people in the United States, that literally had a foot on their neck, holding them down, keeping them in cycles of poverty. That's happened, and that exists in smallholder farming communities globally. And so what can we do to right that wrong? Well, my belief is what we can do is include those people in economic systems and help them take advantage of them. Right? Have them be the winners. If we're going to talk about winners take all as a, economic development theory and all the rest, the fact of the matter is that our farmers in the countries in which they live will become some of the most economically secure parts of the population with our program within 2 years of us entering into a new country, right? So if we can get the demand side of this to make sure that the companies that need to buy the carbon credits, individuals, you and I, who own homes or rent homes or, live in our society, if we all step up to support the products and buy the products that those farmers make, buy and support our own carbon action plans that we need to make as individuals and as companies by buying the carbon that is needed, that we all need to buy to offset our activities in the world that that we're polluting from those farmers. Really amazing things can start happening. Like you change the income pyramid, and you actually do start looking at reparations and thinking about it in the context of the polluters. There's all kinds of bad names that we can call ourselves if we want to look at it through a negative frame, which is a perfectly legit frame, quite frankly. To the colonizers and the capitalists and all the people who have benefited from this really crappy system that has been established. If we can shift who's benefiting from it more, not so that we don't benefit from it, but that we are in fact recognizing the actual value that the massive majority of this world, the population of this world, is providing to us, we'll be in good shape. It seems simple, but it is. So
how many $20 carbon credits would I need to buy to offset, or would an average American need to buy to offset?
So
average.
What's interesting is we actually have a tool that helps you measure that. We partnered with Berkeley and came up with a modification of something called the Cool Climate Calculator, and you can get to it Yeah, it's a really great system created by Berkeley researchers at Berkeley, and the good answer to your question is that the answer is local. It's regional. So and we break it down by zip code. So we basically, zip codes aren't a perfect way to do this, but it's the best and easiest for us to do. And basically, we've created a website called measuremycarbon.com, and basically you're able to go there and type in your address, and it will answer your exact question, right? It'll show you, based on the zip code you live in, this is the average amount of carbon emissions that your household likely emits. And we throw in a measurement of, if you have a backyard, it will measure the carbon stored in your backyard. And I can tell you, yards that look a bit more like mine, not trying to be superior here, but it's just, I've done this on purpose, where I have a lot of native plants, I have a lot of soil management taking place, and a lot of, a pretty small amount of actual grass growing, have a lot more carbon stored than those that don't. And my house, in terms of, our house is not the most energy efficient. We can't actually, unfortunately, because we live next to a forest, have solar here. But, there's a lot of things that I wish we could be doing in our house. So that means my house, when I go into that calculator and I actually adjust the numbers, I'm actually a little worse in my household than everyone else in my zip code, which is embarrassing, but true. Instead of beating myself up for it, my wife and I have looked for ways to optimize things that we can optimize to reduce the amount of emissions that we're putting out in the atmosphere. But at the same time, we're buying, I think with our house is about 35 to 40 tons of carbon that we need to buy to offset the combination of my yard, which is, positive, it lowers your emissions number, and the house, which is large. So we net out about 35 to 40, which is actually kind of high.
Is it 35 to 40 credits?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So
which equals a ton. It's an equivalent of CO2. And by the way, what people should know about credits and what I'm actually talking about here is that whatever the cubic meter area of vegetation and soil that we measure through our pretty advanced technology stuff that we have, it's a partnership with Google and NASA that allow us to do that. So
say you put a 2,000 square foot yard, and then like half of it would be garden.
If half of it has photosynthesis taking place on it, that's what we look at, photosynthesis.
Okay.
So even your grass, which has a very low carbon value, grass is pretty bad at sequestering carbon. Actually, it's all very shallow and not very helpful. But there is still some, and you should get credit for that, right? But basically, for every ton of carbon, when we're talking about a ton of carbon and what it means related to a carbon credit.
Ton is such an
abstract
term to me.
What it means, what it means in the legal terminology of a carbon credit is a CO2 equivalent. It means on my land, I think it's 9 tons of CO2 equivalents that are here, that are present on my land. That means if I burn down or bulldozed all of my vegetation and destroyed everything on my land, there would be an emission would take place of 9 tons into the atmosphere of carbon dioxide, right? That's bad. So by storing it, right, I'm preventing it from going into the atmosphere. If I add new plantings, if I change some of my grass, or I do things like regenerative farming practices, which is the answer to all of this, I put up a cover crop over the winter on we're experimenting with on our very small little garden beds, as you're seeing here. If we do that, literally we could triple the amount of carbon that we're storing on our land, right? So there are things that you can do. If somebody adds a food composting system into their household, out to their yard, it lowers your carbon footprint a lot, actually, by several tons every year. And so these are things that you can do that aren't involved in buying something from my company. I just want to be really clear. But they're actions you can take. It's part of the carbon action plan that we provide on that website. And basically, we try to encourage people to take action in the same ways that we do with corporations. Corporations need to do the exact same thing. How can they, maybe it is composting for a company, but maybe it's, getting a more energy efficient fleet, or maybe it's doing something, cool benefits for their employees, or who knows? It could be lots of different things. And those are all behaviors that companies can do to lower their emissions. And yes, they still should be buying carbon credits for the amounts that they can't get to or they can't achieve because they are operating in the Western world.
Thank you so much for explaining that.
Yeah, no problem.
probably have many, many more conversations with you about this in the future.
Love it.
Trying to wrap my head around it. Thank you so much for talking to me, Josh, and thank you so much for proving once again that food is at the center of everything.
It is.
And of saving the world.
And our bellies.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
forget that. I mean, really, like, it's the most intimate thing that we interact with all the time. We're literally putting it into our bodies, digesting it. And, it's literally everyone listening to this right now, even if you're hungry, you have a bunch of food in you. And it's impacting your little microbiome and your ecosystem in your body. Let's get serious about thinking about it.
We're going to have you as a guest and talk about the whole biome thing now.
Would love to.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone knows that food is cool. No secret. Eat that food with a bowl and spoon.
With Bowl and Spoon is written, produced, and hosted by me, Shelley Danko Day. Copy editing by Carolyn Ristow, details reviewed. Original theme song was written and performed by Paul Labrise and Friends. You can listen to With Bowl and Spoon anywhere you get your podcasts. Follow us and send us questions or messages on Facebook and Instagram or on our website, withbowlandspoon.com. Thanks for listening.